hadn't changed so fundamentally by 1991. So what happened? The world has evolved and will continue to evolve, I'm sure. But in the past, you had all sorts of different systems, right? You had empires. Empires that were established essentially by force of conquest, and so were not necessarily united by any common factor other than conquest. You had some nation states which were definably the product of nationalism. And you had colonies. Those are the three big features of the world in the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century. The empire, the British Empire, was so vast, it spread across the world. The line used to be that the sun never sets on the British Empire because it extended. They used to be painted red in world maps. And the red stain, as it was, spread completely from where the sun rose in the east, in the South Pacific or whatever, all the way to the west, to islands like British Guyana was not an island but a territory in Latin America, but it was also an island off the coast of the South American continent that the British controlled. So you've got this huge empire. There are people of different ethnicities, different languages, different religions. The only thing working together was British rule. Similarly, in the 19th century, a fairly major empire was the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The Austro-Hungarian Empire controlled large chunks of Central Europe, headquartered in Vienna, but controlling all of Austria, all of Hungary, and many other parts of the European world, but getting increasingly weak as the 19th century wore on. Then you had the Ottoman Empire, which was the empire of the Turks. And the Ottoman Empire, which controlled large chunks of territory, heading all the way into Central Asia, was also, that was the first, the longest lasting global Muslim empire. And these were the three big empires of the 19th century. All of them had colonies. The Ottomans probably would not accept that theirs were colonies in the other sense, but they were actually, in many ways, the most absorptive of the colonies. They were quite prepared to accept anybody from any part of their empire as qualified. Once he had converted to, he or she had converted to Islam, they had the same rights as every other citizen and was able to rise to high positions in the Ottoman Empire. That was less true, obviously, of some of the other empires. The British Empire notoriously practiced a certain amount of ethnic discrimination until very much later into their existence. And then you also had, of course, the French and Portuguese and Dutch empires, much smaller, controlling smaller territories. But in the case of the French, large chunks of Africa, which will become important when we talk about this. So the empires of the colonies, and then we had some nation states. A very good example of a nation state was Germany. Germany didn't have any colonies, it had a handful of colonies, two or three, for a brief period between the 1870s and the First World War, and then lost them in the First World War. So you can't really count that very seriously. But Germany as a country was a product of 19th century European nationalism. And the defining characteristic of that was that you have a people united by a common ethnicity, a common language, and a common religion. Very different from the empires, after all. So in the German idea, you could recognize a German instantly because he was Christian, white, and spoke German. Simple as that. That was also true, by the way, in many ways of the French, but because the French had extensive colonies, they developed a more expensive notion of citizenship in the French Empire. But the Germans certainly had this very strong nationalism. Germany was a product of a number of different principalities, including some that used to be part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, but which came together on the basis of these three principles. If you look at the Italians, very similar story. Italy, till well into the 19th century, was actually, if you think of it as a fairly small country, it was a collection of many, many small principalities. And these principalities were united only in the 1860s, when a couple of great nationalists, intellectual thinker, politician called Cavour, and a man with a gun called Garibaldi, they decided that all Italian-speaking people must come together. And of course, again, as with the Germans, all Italians were white, Italian-speaking, and Christian, in fact, Roman Catholic. So that was a beautiful thing. It created the Italian state. Though, in fact, at one point, when the Italian state was created, a very famous writer, Massimo Zamparelli d'Azeglio, who wrote at that time, "We have created Italy, and all we need to do is to create Italians." Because the notion of an Italian nationhood still had to be created. I'm sorry, I didn't have That was essentially what we find with these three independent states. When the First World War took place, the Ottomans were at the losing end of the war. The Austro-Hungarians were at the losing end of the war. The Brits were on the winning side. But two of the three big empires then collapsed. The French continued, and as I said, the smaller ones, the Portuguese, the Dutch, the Belgians, they also continued. But you saw the first emergence of a whole set of new countries after the First World War. By the time of as you know, the First World War was 1914 to 1918. Then, for 20 years, the world was trying to come to terms with the new realities of the end of that World War. And then, in 1939, we had the Second World War. This time, Germany, as the superpower of Europe, they've been trying to conquer more and more space. They had lost their colonies in the First World War. They felt that they too had the capacity to exercise more muscle. They wanted to control more of Europe and other channels of the world. The Japanese, who had risen in the East, made common cause with the Germans. The Japanese attacked the British Empire in the East, the Germans in Europe, and there was even fighting in Northern Africa. But it's not a history lesson. So at the end of all of that, in 1945, the global political environment as we know it in the 20th century and the second half of the 20th century was born. It was born at the end of the war with the defeat of the Germans and the Japanese, and with a very strong sense that the empires of the old days could no longer survive. That having fought for freedom and democracy for themselves, they had to ground it for the people. So the most important characteristic of world affairs and world politics at the end of the Second World War was the onset of the age of decolonization. India was the first. In 1947 we became independent, Pakistan was carved out of us. But still, you had the beginning of the end of the British Empire. It didn't happen overnight. The British continued to hold on to many of the colonies in Africa and so on. So from 47 to the mid-60s, slowly, year by year, nationalist movements in different parts of the British Empire began to assert their claims. And the first ones who became independent, we became very vocal and influential supporters of independence for these colonies and of decolonization, and working in the United Nations Decolonization Committee and so on. We pushed very hard for countries to be given freedom. It became untenable and particularly became unaffordable for many of these empires to sustain themselves. So the United Nations began in 1945 with just 51 member states, has reached that 192 today, mainly because of the decolonization and the freedom given to so many countries that were previously under imperial rule. Same thing with the French colonies. The French had to hold on a bit longer, but by the 1960s they had to give up also. Indonesians had already fought the Dutch successfully in the late 40s, and they had won their independence against the Dutch. The Belgians were pushed out of their biggest colony, which was the Congo in the middle of Africa, by 1961. And the Portuguese, which they themselves being ruled by a military dictator, didn't give up, relinquish their colonies at all until they were forced. In the case of their colonies in India, Goa, India marched in and took it over by force in 61. But in the case of their colonies in Africa, it was only when the Portuguese dictator Salazar died and his successor Caetano was overthrown in Portugal that the Portuguese gave up control of their African colonies. As it is in 1975, the decolonization of Portuguese Africa began. So you see a process that took time, that took in fact decades. But in the process, our global political environment changed from the picture I painted earlier of big empires and nation states and colonies into one with a large number of new countries that had come into being as a result of the events of the 20th century. Yes?
Dr. Tharoor, I have a question for you. In this process of colonization, the United States, as we know it now, never actually went into this sort of colonization as we know it. What do you think are the reasons for that?
Well, they did have foreign conquests. The Philippines, for example, was an American colony for almost a century. They also had extended periods of rule over Haiti and Cuba. But they had a couple of reasons. The first was their own very strong philosophy of democracy, having fought for freedom against British rule. they felt they should not inflict direct rule on others. So they rather came up with a notion known as the Monroe Doctrine. In 1823, the then American President, James Monroe, put forward a theory that said that all of the Western Hemisphere, including all of Latin America, should not be interfered with by European powers, that it is under American protection. So these countries were independent, but America was the most influential player in those countries. Now, some might argue that was not very much different from the way in which the British controlled some of the princely states in India during their rule of India, where nominally, the Maharaja of Kashmir or Nizam of Hyderabad or Maharaja of Mysore were nominally, on paper, independent countries, but in practice, they had somebody in their capital called the British resident of the capital army, very modest title, just the resident. He's the one who called the shots. He told them what they would do and couldn't do. So I would argue that the Americans were a little better than that, that they didn't interfere quite that much, but it's also clear they were the single most important influence on these Latin American countries. And when America wanted to get its way, it did. The best example is when there was a desire to create a canal across the isthmus that connects North America, South America, and the isthmus of Central America. And initially, they tried to create this canal by talking to the government of Nicaragua. And when the Nicaraguans were not prepared to cooperate with the Americans on this, the Americans essentially created a Panamanian independence movement. There was no country called Panama before that. Supported it. The Panamanians, quote unquote, won their independence, and then they gave permission to the Americans to construct the Panama Canal. So the interests of American and worldwide shipping through the canal were achieved by a political exercise in creating a wholly new country. You see what I'm saying? So these things used to happen, but still I agree to the conventional colonialism, where they would come and plant their flag and rule the country. The Americans did that only in the Philippines. From about the 1840s to the 1940s, they ruled the Philippines. But otherwise, even Cuba, they had a very strong presence, but they preserved nominal Cuban sovereignty. Haiti had American soldiers in occupation for 20 years, but they never made Haiti a part of America. The one part that, since you raised it in America, which was an example I didn't mention, I was giving you two examples earlier when I talked about countries that may or may not one day acquire sovereignty, is Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is an island off the coast of America. It was Spanish, won by in the war against the Spaniards. The Americans controlled Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is not a state of the U.S. Union. It is not a colony in the conventional sense because it elects its own government and so on. It has an unusual status called Commonwealth. It has a Commonwealth associated with the United States. But the truth is, if tomorrow there was a majority vote for independence in America, the Americans would probably respect it. It's just that right now, the Puerto Ricans themselves are quite happy with the arrangement, but they have all the benefits of being associated with the US. And there is independence in it, but it doesn't have all the benefits. So that's the answer to your question. Yes?
US followed the policy of isolationism till the First World War. It was post-Pearl Harbor. Then it got involved and we see the post-American, pan-American presence everywhere. My question is, South America, which are basically called the banana republic, what has been the role of US and when did it become engaged? Because you said it was not in the colonial rule, but the interest of US has always related and days.
Right. Well, when you speak of isolationism, going right back to the beginning of the founding of the US, they had taken the position in, you will find famous statements by presidents, Washington, Jefferson, and Adams. Washington, Adams, and Jefferson, the first three, saying things like America does not go abroad in search of monsters to destroy, or we should stay clear of foreign entanglements, we should not mix ourselves up in other people's affairs. It was largely a result of the fact